What happens when your car swerves at high speed and doesn't stop in time? That's what the Moose test simulates, and it's not just tiny cars failing this one. SUVs, hybrids, even performance brands, all exposed in seconds. Some almost flipped, others didn't steer at all. In this video, we'll walk through 17 cars that failed the dreaded Moose test and the reasons behind them. Stay to the end, because the worst offender is a modern SUV trusted by thousands of families. After seeing the footage, you might rethink your next ride. First, let's understand what a Moose test is. It's a high-speed swerve that simulates a real-life emergency, like when a child, animal, or another car suddenly appears in front of you. The driver must quickly change lanes without braking. Sounds simple, right? Not for every car. Real lives depend on how a vehicle reacts in moments like these. That makes the Moose test so important. Now that we know what's at stake, it's time to reveal the cars that couldn't keep it together when it mattered most. Starting at number 17 is the Mercedes-Benz AClass, 1997. When Mercedes launched the A-Class in 1997, they wanted to show the world they could build a small car with big luxury. What didn't they expect? That a Swedish moose would bring it to its knees, literally. The test results were shocking. During a sharp evasive maneuver at just 37 miles per hour, the A-Class didn't skid, it didn't slide, it flipped, completely tipping over mid-swerve like a clumsy acrobat missing the landing. Footage of the rollover went as viral as it could go in 1997. The media roasted Mercedes, the public lost confidence, and rival brands had a field day. But to their credit, Mercedes didn't sulk. They recalled the car, paused production, and re-engineered everything, from the suspension to the chassis. Then they did something bold. They added electronic stability program as standard. That one flip helped make ESP the new norm in safety tech. That was wild. But wait until you see what happened when a legendary brand nearly rolled on its own turf. Next up at number 16 is the Toyota Hilux 2016. The Hilux might be one of Toyota's toughest models, but it only takes a moose to bring it down. Built on nearly 5 decades of rugged reputation, the 8th gen Hilux was supposed to be unstoppable. But when technicians threw it into the Moose test, things got wobbly fast. At just 37 miles per hour, the Hilux swerved and nearly tipped over. Its rivals handled the same test at even higher speeds with no drama. But this Toyota? It danced on the edge of disaster. Despite having electronic stability control as standard, something was off. The tires gripped too well, the center of gravity leaned too hard, and without an anti-rollover system in place, the inside wheel lifted like a warning flag. According to test driver Ruben Buryason, the Hilux showed signs of flipping that should worry any buyer, and it wasn't a one-time fluke. Repeated tests gave the same nerve-wracking results. Fitting larger wheels helped reduce the effects slightly, but the problem didn't vanish. The truck still leaned dangerously. Number 15 is the Toyota RAV4 Prime Plug-in Hybrid 2020. On paper, the RAV4 Prime looks like a perfect win. It's efficient, fast for an SUV, and packed with tech. Unfortunately, the car lost all composure in the Moose test. At 39 miles per hour, the RAV4 darted into the turn, and everything went wrong. First came the understeer. Then, as the driver corrected, the rear snapped out aggressively and slammed into the cones. Not one or two. A whole family of cones got flattened. But that wasn't the worst part. The suspension bounced and destabilized the SUV even more. The front left tire rolled so hard it almost peeled off the rim. Imagine that happening during a real-world swerve, on a highway, beside a barrier, or worse. This wasn't a driver error. The test was done by professionals who knew exactly what was coming. And still, the RAV4 skidded beyond control, suggesting a serious flaw in its stability programming. And if you thought hybrids were shaky, just wait. An old-school 4x4 legend fumbles next. Number 14 is the Suzuki Jimny 2019. With a ladder frame, live axles, and serious ground clearance, it's a throwback to old-school 4x4s. At 47 miles per hour, the Jimny charged in, but couldn't hold its line. It clipped cones, wobbled hard, and struggled to recover. The reason? Its chunky off-road tires had barely any grip on tarmac. Add in a slow steering rack, and the little SUV was late to react every time. The testers dropped the speed again and again, searching for control. At 42 miles per hour, the Jimny finally cleared the cones. That's well below average for modern SUVs, but honestly, it could have been worse. With its short wheelbase and tall ride height, this boxy climber was built to crawl over rocks, not dance around them. It's not just off-roaders that struggle. Some sleek, expensive EVs couldn't survive the moose either. Coming in 13th place is the Volvo C40 2022. You'd expect a modern EV like the Volvo C40 to glide through the moose test with grace. It's sleek, heavy, and packed with tech. The variant tested was fully loaded and riding on Pirelli P0 Elect tires, premium rubber meant for electric performance. The drive mode? Just plain normal. At 48 miles per hour, the C40 dove into the course and immediately understeered wide. It didn't spin, didn't panic, but it just wouldn't turn in sharply enough. The car pushed past the cones like it politely refused to cooperate. Testers noted that the steering felt okay, and there was nothing dramatically wrong, but the grip just wasn't there. Whether it was tire compound, surface temp, or weight distribution, the C40 struggled to stay on course. Its best clean run came at 43 miles per hour. Not exactly a disaster, but disappointing for a car in this price range, especially when rivals in its class handle better at higher speeds. So much for Swedish precision, this one skated right past the mark. At number 12, we have the Ford Ranger 2007. Tested by Hot Cars, the Ranger struggled to stay composed, even under 43 miles per hour. Still, it couldn't hold the line. Despite its torsion bar front suspension, a setup meant to help with load balance and stability, the Ranger flopped the handling test with alarming ease. It swerved wide, scattered cones, and showed poor control during sudden direction changes. This wasn't just a bump in the road. In an actual emergency, like avoiding a deer or a reckless driver, the Ranger's sloppy response could lead straight to a ditch or a collision. What's worse, this truck was designed to haul, tow, and tackle rough roads. But even with a durable chassis and off-road cred, it lacked the reflexes to dodge an unexpected obstacle at a moderate speed. Number 11 is the Nissan Kicks 2018. During Vondrel's Moose test, the compact crossover nearly tipped over at just 40 miles per hour. The footage showed the body leaning hard, so hard that it looked ready to roll. You could see the test driver's face tighten, not from speed, but from fear. The car leaned like a sailboat in rough seas, barely clinging to the pavement. Now here's the twist. Not all trims of the Kicks are created equal. In markets like Mexico, some versions don't come with the electronic stability program at all, and that's the version that was tested. Without ESP, the Kicks struggled to stay upright. But with it, the car completed the maneuver cleanly, a huge difference. If you think things can't get worse, you're wrong. One of America's newest electric crossovers totally dropped the ball. In the 10th spot is the Ford Mustang Mach-E 2021. This car had one job: to hold it together. With a low-slung battery pack and all-wheel drive, it should have cruised through the Moose test. But when Technikons Verd lined up 4 electric crossovers, only the Mach-E lost control. At speeds above 42 miles per hour, it couldn't keep it together. Its rivals, Hyundai Ioniq 5, Skoda Enyaq Ivy, and Tesla Model Y, handled the same course with ease. The Model Y even passed at 46 miles per hour. But the Mach-E, it understeered, the rear stepped out, and the ESC just sat there, too slow to react. The testers weren't impressed. They called it clearly deficient. The vehicle tested was the AWD long-range model, riding on factory tires. No word on whether Ford's summer tires would have helped. But when the core stability system doesn't step in fast enough, grip alone won't save you. Ford is already updating software to improve range, but maybe it's time to rethink the ESC too. Because when a Mustang stumbles at a swerve, it's not just embarrassing. It's downright shocking for a car that's supposed to sprint with the fastest SUVs in the world. Taking the 9th position is the Citroen C3 Airross 2017. It's compact, practical, and aimed at everyday drivers. But when it was put through the Moose test, things unraveled fast. At 45 miles per hour, the C3 lost grip and stability. The tires couldn't hold the line. The car slid wide, scattered cones, and never fully recovered. This wasn't a one-off mistake. The C3 consistently struggled with sharp direction changes. It just didn't feel planted when it mattered most. Even with electronic stability control as standard, the system didn't respond quickly enough. Combine that with only 2 airbags, and it's no surprise the model scored 0 stars in Latin New Car Assessment Program safety ratings. Built in Brazil, this version of the C3 lacks the safety depth expected in modern cars. It's the kind of vehicle that works fine in daily traffic, but hesitates when pushed in an emergency. A car this light and basic shouldn't pretend to handle like a bigger SUV. Hold onto your seatbelt, because what you're about to see is a full-size SUV that nearly tipped over before hitting 40 miles per hour. Number 8 is the Jeep Grand Cherokee 2012. You'd expect a big SUV to stay planted, right? Turns out, that's not always the case. During Sweden's infamous Moose test, this one scared the test crew stiff. At 38 miles per hour, it lifted its inside wheels off the ground. Push it a bit faster, 39.5 miles per hour, and it rolled. That's not a good look for a family SUV. The goal of the test is simple: dodge a sudden obstacle like a moose and stay in control. But the Grand Cherokee failed to keep all 4 wheels planted. Its body leaned hard, stability control couldn't save it, and it tipped. The situation was bad enough that testers stopped and raised red flags. If that happens under 40 miles per hour, what would it do in a real emergency at a highway speed? It's a reminder: size doesn't always mean safety. The next one will really surprise you. An SUV millions trust their families with. Number 7 is the Toyota RAV4 2019. Back in 2019, the all-new Toyota RAV4 stumbled hard in the Moose test, and not in a small way. Teknikens the Swedish magazine famous for putting cars through this brutal test, called the RAV4's behavior dangerous. The problem? Its electronic stability control system reacted far too late. At just 42 miles per hour, the RAV4 leaned dangerously onto 2 wheels. For a family SUV, that's a disaster waiting to happen. Toyota didn't waste time trying to redesign the whole car. Instead, they went straight to the software. With a smart recalibration of the vehicle stability control system, they gave it stronger braking power and faster reactions during evasive moves. There were no mechanical changes, no flashy redesigns, just sharper, smarter code. And it worked. After the update, the RAV4 sailed through the Moose test at 45 miles per hour, staying planted and composed. Taking the 6th place is the BMW M4 Competition 2021. BMW's M division is famous for building dream machines. The M2, the M5, they're legends, benchmarks, and pure performance royalty. But when the 2021 BMW M4 Competition Coupe lined up for the dreaded Moose test, the story took an awkward turn. Instead of calmly weaving through like a seasoned pro, the M4 snapped into oversteer at the worst possible moment. Most modern cars play it safe with understeer during emergency maneuvers. Not the M4. It lunged sideways like it was chasing a trophy at a drift competition. Even more embarrassing? It barely completed the test at just 47 miles per hour. For a car packing this much horsepower and hype, that's not exactly brag-worthy. After the first swerve, the M4 struggled with whiplash corrections, smacking cones all the way down the course. Now, to be fair, the M4 crushed the slalom test. Zero body roll, laser-sharp moves, total control. But outside a track or a closed course, that razor-edge setup can be risky. In the fifth spot is the Skoda Superb Ivy 2020. The Skoda Superb Ivy may look polished, but under pressure, it falls apart. During Sweden's infamous Moose test, it was asked to swerve through obstacles at 40.4 miles per hour. It barely survived. The rear end snapped out so badly that the driver clipped a cone trying to stay in control. At 42.3 miles per hour, things got even messier. The Superb's back end swung wildly, forcing the driver into frantic corrections. By the time they hit 43.5 miles per hour, the Skoda was hopeless, wiping out two cones and showing dangerous oversteer. At 44.7 miles per hour, it failed again without much of a fight. Well, the Skoda Superb isn't a sports car, but it should handle an emergency swerve better than this. For comparison, a Peugeot 508 breezed through the same test at 48.5 miles per hour, and a Mercedes C-Class wagon stayed composed at 46 miles per hour. Their stability systems calmly nudged them into safe understeer. The Skoda? It spun itself right off the honor roll, and if you think that was disappointing, the next one is even messier under pressure. Number 4 is the Volkswagen Passat GTE 2020. This car performed just as poorly as the Skoda Superb Ivy. As speeds picked up, the Volkswagen slid straight into oversteer and quickly lost control. Keeping it inside the cones wasn't just tricky, it was a real battle. At 48 miles per hour, the driver entered the Moose test blind, unsure what the Passat would do. On the second swerve, the rear snapped loose with a vengeance. The driver fought to save it, but ended up smashing a cone on the opposite side of the track. This kind of performance isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. Some automakers have used Moose test failures to improve their cars. Whether Volkswagen Group will do the same remains to be seen, but they definitely have homework to do. Slowing down to 45 miles per hour finally helped. The Passat managed a clean run without hitting cones. Still, the tail wagged dramatically, and the driver had to stay sharp to keep things together. Long story short, the Passat GTE passed, but only after lowering the bar. Taking the third position is the Mazda CX30 2020. This car might look sleek and handle well, but it ran into serious trouble during the Moose test. At higher speeds, the CX30 struggled badly. The rear end swung out during quick turns, making it hard for the driver to stay in control. It even knocked over cones while trying to complete the course. The tires were a big part of the problem. The CX30 uses Bridgestone Turanza EL 440S, which have received below-average ratings from customers. That lack of grip made the car unstable when it needed to react fast, seriously hurting its performance in emergency moves. When the speed was lowered to 45 miles per hour, the CX30 finally completed the test without hitting cones. Even then, the rear still felt loose and unpredictable. It could handle slower speeds, but it clearly struggled when pushed harder. At number 2, we have the Kia Sportage plug-in hybrid 2023. On its first run at 48 miles per hour, the SUV was all over the place. It struck cones in every part of the emergency lane change. By the end, it bounced its rear right into a small army of cones. Stability wasn't the problem, control was. The Sportage stayed upright, but simply couldn't stay between the lines. Things didn't get much better at lower speeds either. The Hyundai Tucson, its close cousin, managed a clean run at 46 miles per hour, but the Sportage, it still couldn't pass. Massive understeer kicked in halfway through the swerve, wiping out more cones. The driver tried to wrestle it back, but failed to complete the final turn. The best the Sportage could manage was at just 44 miles per hour. Even then, it wasn't pretty. A car this modern shouldn't struggle so badly in a basic emergency maneuver. And just when you thought you'd seen the worst, the next SUV turned into a bouncing ball on wheels. Finally, at number 1 is the Jeep Renegade 2012. Designed to mimic a sudden swerve and recovery on the road, the test quickly exposed the Renegade's biggest flaw. Riding on 235/55 Goodyear all-season tires wrapped around 17-inch wheels, the plug-in hybrid simply couldn't keep up. At 48 miles per hour, the Renegade understeered straight into the cones and refused to snap back into its lane. Even dropping the speed to 45 miles per hour didn't help much. It wasn't until 44 miles per hour that it finally made it through without wiping out cones. The main culprit was the air suspension. It's so bouncy that the Renegade felt more like a basketball than an SUV. This flaw is clearly visible in the test videos. Compared to vehicles like the Mercedes ML, which uses active dampening to control bounce, the Renegade's setup falls way short. Drivers with the standard coil suspension may avoid this mess, but for those stuck with the Air version, Jeep seriously missed the mark on safety. Some cars flopped, some fought back, but the Moose test never lies. Which one shocked you the most? Comment below, smash that like button, subscribe for more car chaos, and stay tuned for our next video, Most Hated Cars That Owners Regret Buying.